So I thought before I got started with the build, I'd actually talk a little bit about the supplies that I'll be using, and primarily the paint supplies that I'll be using, the pigments that I'll be using to create my faux bronze effect. So at the core of this are the Pearl X powdered pigments here. These are by a company called Jacquard. It's Jacquard. And I picked these up at Hobby Lobby, so I think you can pick them up at pretty much any hobby supply. There's about $4 or $5 for these things per jar, so it's not terribly expensive, and they seem to last a long time. Now the powder itself, and I don't think you'll be able to see this on camera, but the powder itself is almost like the consistency. Now it looks like little pebbles here because it does kind of clump together, but honestly it's a little more like flour or confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar. It's really, really fine. And when you put this in a jar and then you mix in some Future Floor Wax or some other acrylic medium like that, a clear acrylic medium, man, that stuff just disintegrates very, very quickly, and then you get a bronze paint, if you will. So these are the colors I'll be using. This particular one, this is what I call an antique bronze. Get the lid back on here. So I have an antique bronze in this. I have a super copper, which you can tell that is supery coppery there. And then I have one they call silver. It looks more of like a gunmetal color to me. But anyway, I mixed the three of these together to come up with the different variations on the bronze effect. Now, what I want to show you is that the color here, it has nothing to do with the camera, but the color here in the jar, the color of the pigment, isn't exactly what it comes out to be. When you put this pigment in a medium such as Future Floor Wax, something happens to it. And so I'm hoping that the colors are going to come out here on the camera because you can see that is just purely the antique copper, antique bronze there. It has a very coppery color to it. Now, I did not add any super copper to that, but you can see it has a very coppery kind of a color. So to get more of an antique bronzy, the more darker brown color here, once I apply that, I do apply a wash. And for that wash, once again, I go with the Future Floor Wax. And then I use, in this case, I'm using a Liquitex concentrated, and this one is pretty old. This is a burnt umber, but you can get this. You can get it in either a little tub like this or little tubes like this. This is also a Liquitex. This is a high viscosity acrylic. This is a black, and then a burnt umber. I mix a little of the black with the burnt umber here, and then a ton of the Future Floor Wax to really water it down and get a nice little wash that actually ages that bronze really, really well. And it tones it down, makes it look more like true antique bronze. So those are the color pigments that I'll be using. Some of the other supplies that I'll need here, obviously something like a 5-minute epoxy to either epoxy parts on or maybe even epoxy the rare earth magnets, which I have on order, and they should be here in the next few days. And then finally, I'm going to be using, let's see here, let me reach across. I've got the big tub here of Magic Sculpt. This is a 2-part resin. This is just part A. Part B is a similar tub. You just mix it in equal amounts, and I'll probably use a little bit of that to fill in some of the gaps maybe, but I doubt I'll have to use much of that at all. For the finer areas that I want to cover up, I'm going to use Mr. Surfacer 1000. This is kind of like a lacquer-based paint. It's very thick. It's like a heavy body paint. We use it to prime model kits and things like that. I use it all the time. Love this stuff. And it's great. It comes in 3 different grades, a 500, 1000, and a 1500. And I'm not exactly sure which way it goes, if the 500 is the thinnest or the thickest, but basically that's what it is. It's thick, thin, and thinner. And I just kind of go middle of the road. If I need it to be a little thicker, I pour a little of this in a jar and leave it out overnight, and it thickens up rather nicely. And then it can be applied on. So I just always go middle of the road here with the 1000. So for filling in those really fine little crevices, it's great. Sands pretty easy. Once again, kind of a lacquer-based item here. So, and then of course you always have to have some super glue on hand. You know, that's a modeler's weapon of choice there on many occasions. So that's it. I've got all of my supplies in place, and so we're ready to start building.